I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside, it's so comfortable, and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off road. The guy managed the group. He was like, "What are you doing in this beautiful car?" I'm like, "I'm going off road." He's like, "Are you sure? Because you can use one of ours." And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, "No, no, 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 we're going to do this." And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off-road ability as well as its robust interior are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender.
These days, we're all investors, trying to be smart with our money despite our worst impulses. But at iShares, we believe that deep down inside of every investor is a better investor. One that's just waiting to be let out. Explore iShares ETFs and insights and let your best investor out. Visit iShares.com for more information.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show.
I was really fascinated by the news released yesterday. I guess in 2016, there was a hack of an exchange, Bitfinex, where somebody stole, at that time, about $70 million worth of crypto. It was the largest hack at the time. I think it's one of the largest hacks in financial, or the largest crimes in financial history, of stealing from an exchange. And now those same coins are worth about $4.5 billion. Yesterday, they caught the couple involved, Ilya Lichtenstein and Heather Morgan. The whole case is fascinating for a variety of reasons, and I have on with me Lawrence Lewitinn. And Lawrence and I our paths have intersected at various points. We both worked with TheStreet.com, the New York Observer, Yahoo, CNBC. Now you're at Coindesk right now.
I'm at Coindesk now, yeah.
And so you were reporting on this, and I just wanted to chat about this case. What's so interesting about it? And first off, why don't you summarize what you've covered so far?
Okay, well, the first thing to always say is all of this is alleged by the feds, right? So this is not an innocent until proven guilty, and we actually don't know the full details. And that is even clear when you read the complaint that was filed. So yes, as you were saying, in 2016, an exchange called Bitfinex, which was it has an interesting place in the role of crypto, in that Bitfinex and its sister company Tether are, well, specifically Tether is in.
Oh, I didn't know Tether was a sister company of Bitfinex.
Sister company of Bitfinex. Many years they denied any relationship, but I think it was after the Panama Papers came out, it turned out, look at that, all the names seem to match up in managing it. And later on, in a couple of years ago, the New York Attorney General, that's a whole different story we can get into, about the lawsuit from the New York Attorney General and how basically Bitfinex covered up an even bigger loss that they had on their part in dollar terms, right? Because this thing that happened in 2016 was about $70 million. What happened in 2019, 2020, this was more along the lines of, it was several hundred million. So
although was it more Bitcoins? Because don't forget, in 2016, when this hack happened, or when this crime happened, Bitcoin was only at $600 per coin, then it went all the way up to $70,000. So in 2019, 2020, maybe it was at $20,000, something like that, or
It was less. It was
$10,000.
less. I think at the time this happened, it was much less. But this was this is a completely different story. It's going to require several hours to discuss, and it's CoinDesk right now is in the midst of we filed freedom of information law request to get some of the information that subsequently in part of the settlement. So Bitfinex, like iFinex, right? There's a parent company. Did a settlement with the New York Attorney General, and part of the settlement was that Tether was going to release what its quarterly assets are in their attestations. Some of that information, supposedly, there's more details that were submitted to the Attorney General than is being released to the public. And there's always been some questions as to what exactly is on their asset side. And for people who are watching, listening and watching, and they're like, what are you talking about? Tether is it's a stable coin. So the way a stable coin works, it's almost like a casino chip, a poker chip, right? Casino chips. You put in $1, you get a chip. And it helps because you can't move dollars in the blockchain. You need a stable coin.
Right, you need a coin that acts like the dollar and
can
can be
move on the
converted
blockchain.
into dollars. Yeah.
Right. So this
So if
was
I
to
want
have
to get rid of
assets.
Bitcoin, for instance, and turn it into dollars, first I turn it into something like Tether, and then I
Right.
convert the Tether into dollars.
Right. That's if you want to use a blockchain method of exchange. Centralized. When you go put your money with Coinbase, you're actually investing in their. You're basically trading off of their wallet, and this matters into the story of what we're going to talk about with Bitfinex. So you have this. You basically are trading. If you're using a centralized exchange, you're not actually on the blockchain necessarily. You're buying and selling through this centralized exchange. They're keeping their own accounts, they're keeping track of it. But there's an old saying in crypto, not your keys, not your Bitcoin. And that is an incredibly important part of what this whole story is about. So in the story with Bitfinex / Tether, in later years, they had a fairly it's kind of a long, convoluted story involving a payments processor who may have taken a lot of their money, and them opening accounts that, uh, or people opening accounts to process their dollars, and not necessarily being truthful with why they were opening those accounts with the banks, and that's of course a big problem. It's a big no-no. So they ultimately settled with the Attorney General of New York, Letitia James. Rewind a few years though. In 2016, Bitfinex is hacked, and it's hacked to the tune of 120,000, a little under 120,000 Bitcoin. Apparently, it was done in a series of about 2,000 transactions, and it's always been this giant cloud / mystery in crypto. Who did this hack? And there were conspiracy theories.
It was big news then. Like this was before Bitcoin had gone like totally crazy in 2017, 2018. That amount of Bitcoin was 20% of the annual volume of all of Bitcoin traded, apparently. And Bitcoin fell 20% that day when the news of the hack was released. Do we know customers who lost money, or was it just Bitfinex that lost money?
Well, again, they socialized in many ways this loss, which, because again, not your keys, not your Bitcoin. So they were able to socialize some of the losses in the sense that, well, everyone got a haircut.
Okay.
It was like about a third of their accounts got haircuts here.
Did they lose,
So,
like, why didn't they go out of business instantly? Like, if I put money in a bank and then I'm told 1/3 of my money is gone, I would switch banks.
well, a lot of people, again, you need an exchange to trade, right? You need a place to go.
Yeah.
Not everyone. It's not so easy to just pick up and go. I mean, there are all sorts of theories as to why people stayed on Bitfinex. Nonetheless, they did. Bitfinex issued tokens to offset some of the losses for people, which they ultimately repaid. And now they actually had, because of this most recent thing that I was just talking to you about, the New York Attorney General and their loss of several $100 million, they issued another token. that's going to benefit actually from the recovery ultimately, should those coins end up back to Bitfinex. And it's not quite sure how long that process is going to be. Nobody really knows what the next steps are, and then how they're going to allocate those coins. But there is a token out there called Unised Leo, or it's all just called Leo. It's an exchange token, and it's going to benefit ultimately. The token holders are going to benefit from that recovered
Okay.
Bitcoin. So actually, what was interesting, and before we get into the details of this hack, the several days ago, this is around January 31st, February 1st or so, there was some movement in this not all 120,000 Bitcoin were together, right? But they knew that a good chunk of them, this was about 90,000 Bitcoin, right? So you'll see this discrepancy, about $3.8 billion in the amount recovered, but $4.8 billion worth, right? So if you take the current price times 120,000, there's like a good $1 billion gap. So what's been recovered, or what's been accessed, was this $3.8 billion worth on the 90-something thousand Bitcoin. Somebody noticed that there was a movement in it. And the question is, and hopefully I'm not too choppy here, the question is, who moved it? So the initial thought was, well, clearly it's whoever the hackers were moved it. But it turned out some people on the internet were noticing, hey, you know what? The way in which it moved, it kind of signaled that it was an authority, like the Fed's doing it, because there was a small amount that was first transferred, and then the big amount all at once.
Well, why does that indicate the Feds moved it?
I guess it's a method in which the Fed when they seize Bitcoin, that's kind of some things that they would do. There are certain things that they would do, and their behavior pattern would indicate that this was not a potential hacker, but potentially a government doing it. And
is it also, do we know that the place that they moved it to is like a government wallet, or?
I don't remember exactly where it moved. To be honest, I don't remember where it moved, but I did know that people were commenting back then. They were like, "Hey, there's been some movement. It looks like the Feds are up to something."
And they moved it from the wallet, like so. Basically, when Bitfinex was hacked, the 120,000 Bitcoins were moved into some wallet, and you're saying
several
wallets. But like, so how do people know to look at this one wallet and say, hey, this was part of the hack, and now it's been moved? Like, I'm trying to understand.
One of the misconceptions about Bitcoin is that it's private.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. It's actually one of the most public ways to transact in the world. Is that if you use the Bitcoin blockchain, that transaction is recorded, and it's immutable. I mean, it's there forever. Everyone can see it. You look it up, you can see, years later exactly when that happened. There's nobody going back and pressing delete in case you shouldn't have sent it, etc. It's done. That's there. It's on the blockchain. That's the glories of the blockchain, is that all that information is there forever and ever. So this so these kind of transactions, right? They know, oh, these coins moved initially from that hack. They know when the hack occurred, where they moved, etc. And they were flagged, and that's it. And so it's really hard to do it. Nonetheless, it appears that whoever hacked it, right? And now notice that I'm saying it appears whoever did it, because we don't know, right? These are allegations against Lichtenstein and Morgan that they committed. These are allegations made by authorities that they laundered the money, but they didn't say they hacked it. And if you read the complaint, they actually say a hacker.
Right, and although the implication, they said that this complaint is about the laundering of the money of the Bitcoin that was hacked, and they don't identify Lichtenstein and Morgan at all as the hacker. But I guess common sense is, if Lichtenstein and Morgan were the only ones involved in all the laundering, and it really involves the entire amount of the money amount stolen, they probably were the hackers. But we don't know. That's alleged. We don't. It's not even alleged. We just don't know.
We don't know. We honestly don't know. I don't.
But we can guess.
We can make a guess. Yeah, and you can try to make a guess, but legally that doesn't stand. Number one. Number two is that we actually
Right.
don't know, because not all the details, maybe even the government doesn't quite know. The way the government is putting up these charges is that Liechtenstein and Morgan had a cloud account, and they had all the details of all of these accounts in their. And this is in the complaint, that they allege that Liechtenstein and Morgan had all these files, and in it were all these accounts, and that they had used email addresses in India to start accounts in different exchanges, and that KYC AML flags, know your customer, anti-money laundering rules, the flags went up in certain cases. We don't know exactly who tipped off the government that, hey, you should go look into this account. And we have
Although they since they do know what wallet the hacked money went into, they were able to trace that money going from that, money from that wallet going into other wallets, and it owned it by different exchanges, and then ask those exchanges who those accounts owned. And in some cases, they came back with the names Lichtenstein and Morgan, and that kind of gave them the initial clues.
that. Yeah, and so we have that, but we don't know the exact process. And the thing too is that there was a big bounty on whoever could reveal who did this, who would lead to arrests and convictions.
Yeah, $400 million bounty.
Yeah, which is nothing to sneeze at. I mean, look,
Yeah.
if if someone got drunk at a party and opened their mouths for $400 million, I don't know, Mom, I'm gonna have to turn you in. But nonetheless,
I would turn to my mom, definitely.
I don't want to. That's between you and your
She's
therapist.
going to jail.
So, um, they had it. The feds had a warrant, and they went through, and they were able to connect everything that way. They say so. That's sort of how this happened.
And sorry to interrupt, but they got to Lichtenstein's cloud storage account. I don't know where it was. Like, let's say it was Dropbox, and he had a spreadsheet there with the usernames and passwords of many of these accounts in question. So that was a big indicator that he was the owner of these accounts.
Right. And some of them had the word frozen, allegedly,
Mm.
on the lines where those were. So in the complaint, they said that he knew. Um, they claimed that he knew that they were frozen.
I have a question. Since you can always track movements from one wallet to another, even though you don't know who owns the wallets,
Up to a point.
up to a point. So what's that point? Like, how does someone actually get Bitcoin out of this and escape?
So they were sending it out to different. They were using different methods, and again, I'm not a technologist, so that's why I'm being really careful not to describe things in full, because I don't. First of all, I don't want to give people the wrong ideas about how this works. I would say, seek professional assistance when trying to do this. But they essentially were figuring out a way to peel, if you will, the little bits of Bitcoin. I'm trying to describe it in very simple ways, and obfuscate it through different movements and into different types of currencies, such as Monero. Monero is really a real privacy coin, which Bitcoin isn't. Monero makes it hard for people to really hard to track. I mean, and I'm not saying this is to give an advertisement for Monero, but when people do things that aren't necessarily, should we say, kosher in the markets, they use Monero as a way to do it more so than Bitcoin. The reason you hear Bitcoin and all this is actually, a lot of the online frauds and whatever. It's like, send me Bitcoin and what have you to this wallet. Is actually a couple of things. First of all, those hackers sometimes aren't sophisticated, but second of all, there's not as much liquidity in Monero as there is in Bitcoin. So it's easier to ask for Bitcoin because it's easier to access, right? You just go and there are vending machines, or literally, I went to a gas station yesterday and I went in to buy some candy, as I shouldn't, but now I've confessed. My wife's going to yell at me for busting my diet. And as I'm going in to buy some, there's a guy next to me talking about NFTs, and he's getting money. He's getting Bitcoin. in a vending in an ATM.
Yeah, they have
Bitcoin
ATM
ATM
machines for it. Yeah.
In a gas station in New Jersey. So it's ubiquitous. So you hear all these things like, well, Bitcoin is the currency of scammers. No, really, when it comes down to it, there are other things.
So basically, what they were doing was they were taking some of their Bitcoin that was in the hacked wallet that everybody saw was the hacked wallet, but they were moving it to various exchanges offshore
Allegedly.
or decentralized, allegedly, and then maybe switching it to Monero before the feds knew who they were or what was happening. And then once it's in Monero, it disappears because you cannot track
It's
transactions from wallet to
harder.
wallet in Monero.
It's harder,
But
and some of the
Monero,
Bitcoin, yeah.
Monero has over $100 million worth of trading volume a day, though, and this hack occurred, in almost 5 or 6 years ago. So
Before, yeah.
yeah, why didn't they? I still don't understand. Like,
Why they didn't cash out right away?
yeah, or at least over these past 5 years.
We don't know. I mean, again, the way we don't know if it was them who did it, yeah, and who exactly did it, it's the same way. I mean, there was an arrest a few years ago of two Israeli brothers on this very hack, and that
Really?
story, yeah, and the story was like it didn't hold water. We never heard about it again. I don't even know if it went to trial or not. And it was just sort of like it didn't make sense. Who knows what was it was somehow connected, and the Israelis arrested them, but who knows? Like, you just don't know the full details. Again, even the feds admitted a hacker. They didn't say he is the hacker or she is the hacker. They didn't say that in their complaint.
Okay, but like whoever the hacker is, like let's even say it's not them. I'm just talking like hypothetically. How would you cash out on this hack? Like again, so they would move it into Monero or they would move it into other currencies. They would do small transactions, split it up all over the place. So why the other day did people notice that there was movement from this wallet? Hasn't there always been movement from this wallet into all these other
No,
exchanges and wallets?
so there was so far of that 120 million, as I said, 90 million was kind of staying put, and it was 90,000, right? Out of 120,000, 90,000 stayed put, and there was 30,000 that did all that movement. So, you could have had conceivably a situation like Superman 3, where or actually Office Space. You ever see Office Space
Yeah,
where
yeah.
they accidentally get it, so it's like the same thing. It's like you had an accident and you were hoping to steal just a little bit and you ended up stealing a lot. And you could have that situation here. We don't know for certain. We just don't. We don't know, and this is still being debated right now between the custodian, Bitgo, from at the time, and Bitfinex's former employees, saying, "Hey, the custodian had this multi-signature wallet, and you had to have 2 or 3 signatures, digital signatures to approve any kind of transfers out of the exchange." And there was a question of whether or not they just automated that, which essentially negated the whole thing, but that they automated that to make it easier to use, and that this was all put in place. And this is kind of an argument that they've been having back and forth, and other people have been chiming in with this idea that this was maybe have been put in place because it was coming at a time when Bitfinex was trying to operate in the United States. They had to put in place some KYC AML rules, but they were not fans of it. So they made it, yes, they put in these checks, but the checks may have been easy to overcome by design, and that whoever hacked it took advantage of that.
Okay, so I'll get to that in a second. So wherever this wallet was being stored, where they transferred the hacked money, that was being hosted by somebody or no?
No, so you're talking about the Bitfinex's wallets and what have you. Yeah, I mean that was they had a custodian for all their stuff, right? So then those coins moved into a different wallet outside of the control of Bitfinex and their custodian, and ultimately went wherever it went. Say it was a couple of thousand accounts.
That wallet can't be frozen or seized because there's the
Well,
whole
now,
cryptography aspect
yeah, and
of
I
Bitcoin.
think that's the one that ultimately was drained by the feds the other day.
Right, because they figured out how to decrypt it, maybe
Right.
based on what was in the cloud storage of Ilya Lichtenstein,
Yeah.
perhaps. But again, it's confusing to me. Like,
Yeah.
we don't know who hacked, but do we know how it got hacked? Do we know how Bitfinex got
I,
hacked?
you know, mm.
Like, did Ilya Lichtenstein ever work at Bitfinex? I couldn't find any evidence that he
That
had
part I
worked
don't know.
there.
I don't know if he was a consultant. He was somebody who was computer literate, and his wife, and they got married in November. Before they were in long-term relationship, and I think there's some interesting legal aspects as to now that they're married, who can testify against whom, etc. Um, but and so that happened like 4 months ago. Whether or not they were alerted to something, we don't know.
Oh, they just got married this past November.
Yeah,
And
fairly recent. Yeah.
okay, so we don't know. Does Bitfinex know how they were hacked, or they haven't said, or like
I don't know. I don't know.
like someone had access to the
Mm.
security keys of these Bitfinex wallets.
Somebody had a way in which they could do it, in which the custodian said there was nothing noticeable, and that actually led to a lot of the conspiracy theories. It was an inside job, was a conspiracy theory, um,
It kind of had to be
etc.
an inside job because how else would
We
they
don't
get the
know.
keys? Yeah, we don't
We
know.
don't
So
know. We
maybe
don't know. We
they could
don't
have
know
like
if we don't know if somebody left a wallet somewhere. We just don't know. We don't know if somebody left their code somewhere. Somebody left we just don't know that point. All we do know is what the feds allege after the fact of the hack, right? So
right,
there's like a big mystery before. What's interesting is, though, that the custodian, I think it was their chief, I'm trying to remember what the role was, but did an interview with Heather Morgan for an article at Forbes on cybersecurity.
so that might be one of her ways of trying to dig for information of how much they knew.
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I mean, I don't know how or why. It was just an interesting tidbit.
Yeah,
That's a
that is very
distinct
interesting.
possibility. Assuming that she knew something or she was involved again, we don't know if they, until there's a trial, and a conviction, we can't say whether or not that happened.
So assuming it was them, but or assuming it was anybody, they filtered out 30,000 of the 120,000 bitcoins through they transferred it to exchanges that were on the dark web, this Alpha Bay exchange. They had fake email accounts and companies and exchanges in India they transferred things to. So let's say they
Look,
were able to siphon off like $1 billion worth. Why were they writing for Forbes and Inc. and hanging out in New York or California or wherever? Why didn't they just disappear? Like, did they ever get a hold of $1 billion?
look, I'm sitting here and I'm scratching my head on that one too, right? Like, who's the last person you would expect to do it? It's someone right in your face every day. It's
Yeah.
like, but like, we're all hesitant to say they were these criminal masterminds, and not only because legally that we can't say it, right? Because we don't know the full details of how it happened. It's still alleged. It's still an allegation, and it hasn't gone to trial. But it's really hard emotionally to even say it, because you're looking and you're like, they were having a, like a fantastic life, just a fantastic, very normal life.
But like you said, though, they got married in November because perhaps we don't know, but
We
perhaps
don't know.
perhaps they thought that the government was looking after them.
Yeah.
Even then, I don't know. It just seems like really like what would you have done if you had
I don't think
if
I would have done much different if I had that. Maybe I don't have that mentality. I mean, I'd probably just go biking all day.
but you wouldn't
But
like say, okay, I'm gonna hide in South America somewhere,
what
or
life is that? Like, people are
what's the life better than
social.
going to jail?
I, but that's a risk you take if you think that you're going to get caught.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think you're going to get caught, or you could get caught, one thing you wouldn't do is put stuff on the cloud computer after writing articles that you shouldn't put things on the cloud. I mean, there's so many things here where you're just scratching your head. And you're like, this doesn't make sense. And if you
I mean,
feel like you're not getting the full story anyway.
yeah, because I mean, one thing that they apparently bought was a $500 Walmart gift card
Yeah.
with some of the. So like, it doesn't
And
seem like they were.
hotel stays, and it was kind of, it's sweetly modest for what you would do with $1 billion in Bitcoin. I mean, it's like you almost feel like, like God forbid they are like God forbid they actually did it, but you go, like they weren't you see these people, and let's think about this for a second. They're not going to Central America and telling people to invest their money in Bitcoin. They're not going there and pushing the Bitcoin gospel on people who are living hand to mouth. They're not
Yeah.
going out and pushing it on people, and making them the bag holders and selling them all this Bitcoin however they got it. They didn't do that.
But like,
There
here's
are
another
some
thing
people
too.
who are
So
doing this legally and never did anything illegal. But the question is, how much moral is it? How much more moral is it telling people to and countries to put their money in a volatile asset at a time when they're at risk, compared to putting up a couple of rap videos and small figure Walmart cards and maybe going on a vacation. I don't know what's more damaging to society. You tell me.
Well, I mean, I'm in favor of Bitcoin as a currency. Like El Salvador switched from their failing currency to Bitcoin was probably a good decision for the country as a whole.
You're calling the
So we'll
dollar. You're
see.
saying the dollar is a failing currency, but they're in the situation now where they have to pay their debts in U.S. dollars.
Bitcoin's more stable than let's say a failing. I don't know what El Salvador's currency was. Was it
El Salvador's currency is the U.S. dollar. It's been the U.S. dollar for almost was it 2 decades now. It used to be the colon. They got rid of it because it was failing, so they went to the U.S. dollar, and that was a stable currency for them. They switched recently to having both the U.S. dollar and Bitcoin because they have a lot of remittances. The idea is that it would cut costs on remittances. It would help diversify their asset base, et cetera, and attract investors to come into El Salvador to do mining, et
right?
cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But again, it's they and President Bukele, likes to brag about how he buys Bitcoin. He said he bought it naked, et cetera, literally physically naked, not naked
Huh.
as in he didn't buy it without puts. I mean, he went and bought it. As a former currency trader, when someone says I bought it naked, you're thinking, oh, he didn't buy puts. No,
Right.
he literally means he was not wearing clothes, or he was standing in his bathrobe or whatever it was. Let's hope, buying Bitcoin on his phone.
And
And I look, again, obviously I cover cryptocurrencies. I'm a fan in a lot of ways, and at the same time, I also think that we all have to be a little more cautious about what we encourage the financial revolution, and who we encourage the people to take up proverbial arms in the financial revolution, because
well,
not every person can afford to do it.
yeah, and I agree with you on Bitcoin. It's still unclear whether this was a good test case or whether it's a currency or what if it has any utility. Ethereum, we're starting to see there's actual real world utility because there's hundreds of millions of dollars in transactions per day, and DeFi is a real thing, and NFTs could be a real thing. We'll see, but yeah, Bitcoin, we don't know. But like you said, it's not like they were, they weren't even really. So what they
They
did
weren't
was
buying
so far.
Lambos. They weren't buying, they weren't being flashy with their money.
So this could suggest maybe they weren't the hacker. Maybe the hacker was paying them to somehow launder part of it for all we know.
We don't know. We don't know. We don't
That's
know. We
interesting.
won't know until there's a trial. We need a trial.
And
We
now
need
they did
justice to
move
come out.
some of they did move some of the Bitcoin into some exchange called Alphabay, which is apparently was an exchange working off of
Right.
the
That's where
dark
they think
web.
that all that stuff got cleaned, if you will, laundered and what have you.
What was
The
Alphabay
Fed
like,
stuff.
and why did it shut down?
I mean, I'm not too familiar with Alphabet. It's I like the up and honest exchanges myself. So that's if
I
there's no
mean,
KYC AML, I don't know if I necessarily want to know what that does.
no, but like if they're connecting to Alphabet already, that means they knew how to navigate the so-called dark web and find other participants engaged in illegal activity or some semi-illegal activity or whatever it was. And my other question there is, why do all of this at all? Why not just find a really big illegal player and sell for a massive discount the coins you have? So, for instance, let's say they stole $70 million worth of coins, now worth $4.5 billion. Why couldn't they just say to somebody on the dark web, "Hey, we've got this wallet with $70 million worth of Bitcoin. We'll sell it to you for $10 million"? And I know there's the answer is I don't know, but I'm just curious. Like I'm just trying to think.
Look,
It seems
they
like what
don't.
they did was stupid.
For all we know, right, the hacker. Again, I'm not going to say I won't say it's Morgan and Lichtenstein for a lot of reasons, but the
Right.
hacker may not have had the same kind of phone book that a James Altucher would have,
I don't
right?
have a phone book of illegal.
But you have a phone book
Uh,
of people who have $70 million to buy Bitcoin, or a couple of billion even. They might not have those kind of connections, and they might not know necessarily, like, how do you, like, it's scary in many ways. Imagine, I mean, like, it's like something like you come across, I don't know, an inheritance or something, or a lot, like you see this with lottery winners, where like they get all of a sudden this massive windfall.
yeah.
And there are many ways you can do it. You could spend it ridiculously, and a lot of lottery winners go bankrupt. You see this a lot with sports, with athletes. A lot of athletes get these massive pro contracts. 5 years after they're done with their leagues, they're bankrupt. There is a huge amount of bankruptcies going on with professional athletes. And you see this also too with lottery winners. Their lives get ruined. And so getting back to your answer, why not spend, why were they spending it so frugally? But you say, well, I mean, what else would you do? Like, what would have been the smartest way to do it?
Oh my gosh, I love these clothes. Mizzen and Main. That's Mizzen and Main. It really is the most comfortable work clothes. Travel clothes. I had to travel this whole week. I'm traveling for a week and a half, and I just took Mizzen and Main clothes with me. Close out 2023 in style with comfortable, breathable, packable, and machine washable pieces from Mizzen and Main. As you wrap up your year-end goals, enjoy a Mizzen and Main dress shirt that you can wear confidently. I like that they've very, very just nice, solid colors. I don't really like to get all fancy in patterns and everything, although they do have some pattern shirts, but very comfortable clothes, stretchable pants. It's just super comfortable, but they look professional, and you can wear them casually or professionally. I like some of their flannel shirts or untuck shirts. I love untuck. I never tuck in. So again, whether you're shopping for a special someone or giving yourself the gift you really want, I just buy myself gifts. Mizzen and Main is the perfect gift for any guy who works, travels, and or cares about looking and feeling great. As you could tell by my many photos across the internet, I care about looking fantastic. I'm practically a model. And let's be honest, every guy loves to look great. So again, shop now at mizzenandmain.com and save 20% when you spend $130 or more using promo code James. That's promo code James at Mizzen and Main, Mizzen and Main.com. You know what I love about fantasy sports is that even though I'm not going to be a great basketball player or a baseball player or a football player or whatever, I feel like I get to participate and make decisions and use my knowledge of these different leagues or these different sports to compete. So it's like I can pick my team or I can pick my favorite players and I could use my knowledge to make predictions and maybe even make money.
So with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League on Prize Picks. This is a league created specifically for combo projections that include two or more players from different sports or leagues. Want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz, who's also been a guest on this podcast, and I've been a guest on his? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries for some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Look, Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. What? So I love playing it. I love anywhere where I can use analytical ability with my interests to demonstrate some skill and maybe make some money. And I like the game like aspect. I do wish they had chess as a category on prizepicks.com, but I'll settle for what they've got. Maybe I should make my own fantasy chess league. But in any case, I love Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/James. Use code James for a first deposit match up to $100. That's the easiest $100 you're ever going to make. So that's prizepicks.com/James and use code James. Daily fantasy sports made easy. The future of learning is definitely online. Like, it's such BS that you have to spend $200,000 or take $200,000 in loans and go to some fancy school when it's useless. It doesn't guarantee you a job. Most employers, including me, do not care about degrees or grades or anything like that. We want to care that you love what you're doing, that you know what you're doing, in some cases that you have experience or that you're willing to learn. But people in general love learning and are curious. Like, the key to success is curiosity. And I think masterclass.com is the perfect model for online learning. I'm really happy they're sponsoring this episode. If you're going to give a gift, give the gift of learning. Masterclass makes a meaningful gift this season for you and anyone on your list, because both of you can learn from the best to become your best, from leadership to effective communication to cooking. Let me tell you some of the classes I've taken. I've taken comedy from Steve Martin. I mean, can you believe I can take a class from Steve Martin on comedy, or Judd Apatow, my favorite comedy director? I could take an actual class from him on writing. Wolfgang Puck on cooking. Dan Brown on writing, or Judy Bloom, who's been on this podcast, on writing. By the way, Wolfgang Puck also has been on this podcast. It's such a pleasure. I try to take classes all the time from masterclass.com. And whether you're watching Masterclass on TV or listening in audio mode in the app or on their site, the quality speaks for itself. It's like these Masterclass instructors are your own personal mentors that are going to help you reach the next level. How much would it cost to take one-on-one classes on comedy from Steve Martin or on chess from Gary Kasparov? You just wouldn't be able to do it. But it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. With a Masterclass annual membership, it's $10 a month. Memberships start at $120 a year for unlimited access to one-on-one classes with all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. So it's not just $120 for one instructor. You get all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. Boost your confidence and find practical takeaways you can apply to your life and at work. And if you own a business or are a team leader, use Masterclass to empower and create future-ready employees and leaders. That's the real education in today's world. So this holiday season, you can give one annual membership and get one free at masterclass.com/JAS. JAS, of course, stands for the James Altucher Show. So right now you can get two memberships for the price of one at masterclass.com/JAS. Masterclass.com/JAS. Offer terms apply. Okay, the smartest way to do it, here's what I think, is if they were the hackers, and I'm putting a big if, and they had it in a wallet that was, everybody saw it in the wallet, but you can't unlock the wallet for the reasons Bitcoin, part of the reasons Bitcoin exists, you can't unlock someone's wallet. It's too difficult. And they could have, and they seem to have connections into the dark web and illegal ways to get rid of. They understood money laundering, at least according to the complaint. They allegedly understood money laundering and all the different techniques, and they were using those techniques, and they did those techniques, and so they cleaned something like $1 billion according to the complaint. So I think the way I would have looked at it was it's one thing to do the hack, it's another thing to clean the money. So find someone in the dark web or some sheik in the Middle East who's willing to take this risk and just say, hey, we got $100 million worth of this. We'll sell it to you for 20 million. We'll sell it to you for 30 million. Just get it off our hands. Wire the money to this numbered Swiss bank account, and then they would disappear. The hacker would, not show up in the U.S. ever again. Move to some, take it on a new identity, which you could pay for, and move to some weird country and live out your life.
That might be what you would do, but humans are
Yes.
incredible. Yeah, but people are incredibly social. They have, you're talking about getting rid of your identity, losing your family, pretending to be dead, and there are people who do that, right? There's always been the question about the Quadriga folks, right? The founder of Quadriga, whether or not is he really dead? That's always been a rumor. But there are other people who, you have a social life, you have family. So they had to put up a bond. It was their parents put up a bond. I mean, I'm not saying again they were guilty, so this is that they were responsible for the hack, but nonetheless, I mean, if you think if somebody is in that, if they were the hacker, etc., um, it's clear their family loves them. It's
Yeah.
clear their friends love them.
It was a $5 million bond for Ilya and a $3 million bond for Heather, and also part of the requirements were they had to give up their phones and computers, and they can only use a flip phone that has no internet access.
Yeah, because
and the parents had to put up their homes.
Yeah, they found a bag of burner phones under the bed
in their
or
bed.
something. Yeah.
So clearly they were up to illegal activity.
No, we don't know. We don't know.
Okay, because there's no trial, we don't know.
We don't know. Right. I'm saying we don't know. But even so, I mean, like I have I have friends who have burner phones, but that's all because they're cheating on their spouses. But
I've never even seen a burner phone. Like, is that a phone that literally is a flip phone that it works for a day or something?
I guess maybe that's Jitterbug's market. I don't know. Like for the senior citizens. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But like get a Jitterbug, for the boomers. For smartphones, the smartphones are kind of scary, so they get the big, with the big numbers. It's like, hello, Billy, this is Grandpa. So maybe that's kind of fun. I don't know. But as I'm saying, like people are social. They these are people who have family that loves them. She had a lot of us watched her videos last night. They were fantastic. I loved them. Loved them. I was I was on the floor. It was genius. There are a lot
her
of
rapping videos.
Yeah, but the thing is that I think people were misinterpreting what was going on there. It reminded me a lot. There was a performance artist named Peaches a couple of decades ago, and Kitty was another rapper, and they're absolutely hysterical. It's comedy, it's rapping, and she's completely self-aware, doesn't take it seriously. And Jeremy Allaire and the Circle Crew did a rap video as well. That looked like they were not aware of what they were doing, and it was embarrassing. What she was doing was pure comedy. My wife and I just sat there. We went through as many videos as we can. Unfortunately, they were able to take them down today, but I bought her whole catalog on iTunes. It was fantastic. It's funny. It has a lot of social criticism. She had one line in a song called SAS, SAAS, holes, which is about people in the SaaS industry, service as a software as a service. And she said, how can 30,000 people be in 30 under 30? Like
that is funny.
It's absolutely funny, and she took a real, she really nailed a lot of the tech culture in a very biting way, and a lot, feminism and all that stuff. It's sort of like, I think people are watching this, and yeah, she's very cheeky and everything, but she was. I look at it as like it was performance art, and I think she did a great job. But that's something that you can't do undercover. You can't do in hiding. You can't do on an island by yourself. It is part of being in a social group. Not living in Manhattan, living in Brooklyn, living in Bushwick, where there's art, there's culture, there's things happening, interesting people doing new things. And she was part, and she had a day job, a regular day job. He had a regular day job, and they were living in many ways. We think like, what would you do with billions of dollars if you had it in your hands? And the answer is maybe they answered that question for us, which is enjoy your life.
Or maybe though, to your other point, maybe there's more to this story because yeah, why live in Bushwick? Why not? Were they overconfident that they were never going to get caught? Were they just to me,
If
something
they
doesn't
were
quite add up.
guilty, if they were guilty, again, this
Yeah, if
is
they're
why it
guilty, yeah.
raises so many questions. But on the outside chance they are responsible or whatever, I'm going to say that, right?
Yeah.
They lived in many ways, a kind of life that many of us are familiar with and are comfortable with and enjoy. I mean, you think about like Warren Buffett living in Omaha instead of on the coast, living in a normal neighborhood instead of like, the biggest house, these obnoxiously big McMansion. He just lived in a normal house, relatively speaking, for one of the richest men in the world. Um, there's something comforting and reassuring about having a normal life. And it's
So you're
something that
saying like Warren Buffett, obviously he's not afraid of being caught for any illegal activity. They must have always had. I mean, they knew they were, allegedly they knew they were engaging in illegal activity, and so that puts a certain fear probably into them. And I would just think they would have taken more precautions lifestyle wise. Like you said, even though they were living a simple life, they weren't spending a lot of money. I don't know. I think I would have probably tried to keep a lower profile or, like I said, disappear or it just, but it makes so little sense to me what they did that it's to your point that maybe there's more to this case
yeah,
that will be uncovered that we don't really know.
yeah,
And I guess the next step is the trial, but it's worthwhile reading the complaint because it does show the complaint itself is almost like a guide to money laundering Bitcoin because it does show like all the different ways in which the feds named all the methods that they were
right.
using for money laundering. And the guy who wrote the complaint was saying, in my experience, blah, 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 this is how money launderers do it. And it's just the whole thing is so odd. And we don't know any connection that they have to Bitfinex, but yet somehow they gained access to a very secure wallet within Bitfinex. And it seems like they got, or allegedly they got this access and nobody else, as far as we know. But again, the feds did not say that. They're not, the feds
They're
are
not
not
tipping their
accusing
hand.
them.
They're not tipping their
Right.
hand. If they know something that if they know something or don't know something, there was no definitive answers on either side of it. So, maybe they're going to get more information from them, or maybe they'll. We don't know. We don't know.
And do you know what happens to the money now? Does it go back to Bitfinex or do the feds
That
hold on to
remains
it?
to be seen. I mean, you would think that at some point it would go back to Bitfinex. Um, how and when and why, et cetera, that hasn't been spelled out yet. And what kind of time frame we're looking at for it to go back. If they weren't expecting it in recent weeks or months, this was definitely a gift for them to get it back finally. But this was, it's I don't know exactly the time frame, and I don't know if it's been spelled out yet or what the next steps are.
If you could ask them one question, what would you ask them?
Bitfinex.
No, if you could ask Ilya Lichtenstein and Heather Morgan.
When's her next album dropping? Uh, it really is good. No, I don't know. I mean, like, I guess it's like, I think the question, who, who did it? and how, what ties were there any? Was it an inside job, or what were the holes? And again, I don't know if they would necessarily have the answers, because we don't know what their involvement was, and we don't know the full
Right.
extent. We don't know what
Right.
they knew, and that's going to come out in trial.
It's such an interesting situation. I'm sure we'll be following it, and Lawrence, I'm sure you'll be
Yeah.
following it. Hopefully, we could do an update at some point.
But yeah, I do think that the key to it all is all of this is that, I think a lot of people are watching this from the assumption that they were involved and did it. A lot of what you were saying is like, why didn't they do this? Why didn't you do that? And I think this, for many people, it's this idea that these are people that were just like them. Like, I could see myself. Maybe I'm not I'm not a talented coder like Ilya, but I could see being friends with them and seeing them around at or her around at a show or cafe or a restaurant, or
Right. They're a part of like the tech community.
part of the tech community, but not like, look, we all know these entrepreneurs who are at the top of their game. The founders that they're like star founders, and you know them, I know them, we've known them, as we said, our careers and our lives have crossed paths many decades, and we know these kind of like stars. And then you have people who are just kind of working their way up through the ranks, if you will, socially. Um, but they're having like an okay life. They live in a nice house, they live in a nice apartment. They, not the biggest apartment, not the smallest. They have a little elbow space, um, but they have normal lives, right? They're not jet setting and going to like fancy places all the time and whatever, and like buying an island and buying a sports team and buying this and buying that. I mean, you see these people who have billions of dollars buying sports teams, right? Having stadiums named after their companies.
But I agree, that would have been too noticeable. But I'm more curious, why didn't they just?
But I
Why
think
did
that's
they?
our fascination. Our
Yeah,
fascination is
there's
that
a lot of whys.
there's a lot of whys, but it's also that, like, you look at your friends and neighbors and you're like, could they be like, could this person be like behind
Yeah.
the biggest crimes of the century, the financial crimes of the century? They're obviously war crimes are real crimes, but like these sort of like white collar crimes that we see. And they live such a relatively mundane existence day to day, getting up, answering emails, dealing with meetings, and the kind of stuff that we hate, or we say we hate. But the question is, if we had all this money, would we necessarily even give it up? I don't know, and I think that's a great question this raises to all of us. How much of this lifestyles of the rich and famous that we were brought up on, how much is that really fulfilling compared to the human interactions, and having a purpose, a daily purpose of going to something and trying to build something with your bare hands and your wit.
But even at the risk of, most people don't have the risk of going to jail by living their normal
Maybe
lives.
that's worth the risk. I like
Yeah.
like we don't, like, emotionally, we just don't know. We don't know, because most of us are never going to be in that position. Most people are never going to be in a position of having $10 million, let alone 4 billion or 3 billion or whatever.
Particularly of ill-gotten gains.
Yeah, or a lot of whatever it is. Like,
Yeah.
most people aren't going to be in that position to really say, oh, if I were this, if I were that, I would do this and that. We don't know. But here they chose, if this is all true, they chose a path that is incredibly familiar and mundane to all of us. And we're sitting here asking why. And maybe we should be saying, maybe we should look at our own situation and say, you know what, we don't have it so bad. We are all billionaires in our own way.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they had this money and they still couldn't take the appropriate measures to make sure that preserve their freedom, they chose their lifestyle over that. Maybe that is a lesson. But like you said, it's, there's a lot we don't know, and to
Yeah.
me, it suggests there's more to the story, which we'll be definitely be following. Like it's an interesting thing because I definitely, we probably, like you said, we probably have many mutual connections with them. So I definitely had
Yeah, I
mutual
counted
friends with
12.
both of them. Yeah, really. I'm sure I have quite a few as well. Well, Lawrence, thank you so much
Thank you.
for helping me figure this out. And you really
Anytime.
raised a really interesting point that there's probably a lot more to this that we don't know. There definitely is. So let's keep in touch over this. And
Yeah.
thanks once again for coming on the podcast. And I
Yeah.
asked the listener, what would you do if you suddenly had a stolen $4.5 billion? Ask yourself that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, let's meet up in Brooklyn, where they are, and we'll
The scene
have
of the
a taste.
crime.
Yeah, we'll have a taste of the lifestyle. What attracted people to staying in Brooklyn? I grew up there as a little kid. I lived there, and I have to admit it is a very appealing kind of a place to be.
Definitely.
So I can understand it.